thank you very much for joining me in this class. It's been an absolutely wonderful experience, and welcome here to week 10. Now, week 10 is going to be a shorter week, and that's because we finished the persuasive material, but we still need to leave time for people to record speeches and start that peer reviewing process. But just because it's a shorter week doesn't mean it's not an important week. Much of public speaking is about being able to engage in self-assessment and plan for future development, and that's what we're going to be doing this week. I would like to spend this lecture unpacking a little bit, reviewing a little bit the course structure and objectives. And I'll end by talking a little bit about the final cumulative quiz, test, whatever you want to call it. So at the broadest level, this course was aiming at helping you design clear presentations and deliver them in an engaging way. Now, of course, we achieved those, or we pursued those larger objectives through some more specific ways. More specifically, we said, all right, you should be able to, at the end of this, where we are now, you should be able to design and deliver basic presentations concisely, informative presentations clearly, and complex arguments persuasively. In addition, we said, well, you should be able to speak confidently with appropriate rate, projection, movement, and vocal variety. And then, of course, also, you should be able to evaluate and critique speeches insightfully. So those were sort of the very broad objectives for this course. Now, as you well know, we pursued those larger objectives through the individual assignments. So we started off with the impromptu speech. It had the fewest moving parts of any of the speeches that we worked with. In that speech, what we were really trying to do was quickly develop and deliver clear and well-supported arguments, be able to explain the relationship between main points and evidence, be able to use reviews and previews and transitions to augment the clarity of the speech's arrangement, and also be able to use delivery to distinguish between key ideas and supporting detail. So after we had done that, after we had sort of spent our time on that impromptu speech with its basic elements, elemental elements, we then moved on to the informative speech, where we tried to layer in an additional aspect of complexity. So in the informative speech, you had to respond appropriately to constraints. You needed to think about and design speech goals. You needed to explain complex topics and evidence. You needed to arrange the speech clearly, and that had to do with what the audience concerns were or what the audience lack of understanding was, as well as the demands of the topic itself. And of course, we spent time talking about how you would deliver this speech in an engaging way that contributed to your ethos. So that set us up for the persuasive speech. Now, in the persuasive speech, the goals were to be able to use stock issues, to be able to identify realistic calls to action, to put all this together in a way that highlighted the argument's congruency. But of course, also being able to write a stylistically rich speech, and then in turn to be able to deliver that language in a way that capitalized on your good writing, while at the same time being able to incorporate and use appropriate emotional and delivery variations and intensities. So each one of these speeches added something, and each assignment allowed us to explore the canons in different ways. And so we did different things with invention and arrangement and style, certainly as we moved through those three speeches. Memory, because we were working them up and preparing for them and using notes for each one of these three in different ways, as well as thinking about different styles of delivery. If you'll recall, the structure of the course really aimed at this sort of tiered approach to study of public speaking. So we started out with identifying and developing a core approach to public speaking, our orality framework, understanding the rhetorical tradition. Then we spent a few weeks talking about the impromptu speech, getting you up and ready on the impromptu speech. We started that, then we started in on the informative speech, finished that. We moved through the basics of the informative speech, preparing and delivering, and then we started again with the persuasive speech, basics, preparing and delivering persuasive speeches. And then here we are now at week 10 at the course conclusion. So obviously a lot of this course has been drawn from the rhetorical tradition, parts of an argument, ethos, stock issues, so many of the terms used in this course. Now our goal is to use this content in service of the skill of public speaking. And the skill, if you'll remember, is highly dependent on the speaking situation. So if we went all the way back to week 1 material, you can remember that the speaker responds to a whole host of constraints, the topic, the audience, the occasion, so on and so forth. So one thing I said in week 1, and I want to reiterate now at the end of the course in week 10, there is no one successful way to a successful speech. There's just not this one way that will always work for each and every person. I hope that this course has provided you with some tools to help you identify your path, and I hope that you can take what is useful to you in your speech settings from this class. But remember, so much about public speaking is about judgment, judging what is best as a good response to a particular set of speech constraints. So I do hope that these lectures, assignments, quizzes, and discussions have helped you reflect and refine your sense of rhetorical judgment. But that said, content is important. So something like the stock issues are not useful to you in a speech if you can't remember what they are. So I want to end this unit here, this opening lecture, by asking you to go take that final comprehensive quiz as a way of reinforcing some of the key ideas, the key concepts, the key tools from this course. And I'll just point out that the quiz is drawn mainly from former lecture quizzes, but really trying to get at what are those tools and refresh your memory as to what those tools are as you leave this course and move into your own speech settings. So we'll end here, and then in the next lecture we'll talk about sort of your growth as a speaker over these 10 weeks.